Hey, this is Cliff, and I just wanted to touch base with people, chime in a little bit. I've had a lot of questions and inquiries about medical cannabis, and people are asking how they can, use a diagnosis of PTSD, which is a qualifying condition, to get them registered for, purchasing and picking up their medicine at the dispensary. And so I'm just gonna go through a few little things here. Should only take a couple minutes. And then if you need my help or need my help guiding you in the right direction, just reach out and let me know. I will leave my contact info at the end of this video. So I know this is kind of small right now to see, but really there's 3 steps in the process, and it starts with the PTSD diagnosis, from a full comprehensive assessment and a self-screening of 37 questions that you would do on your own, and I can send you a link. And I'm going to kind of blow up this, image and kind of go through these 3 steps a little bit more in detail. But the second step then is, once you have a PTSD diagnosis, after you've been assessed by a licensed clinical social worker like myself, then I will send that information over to my qualified medical provider, and they will write you your letter, which is an affirmative defense or recommendation letter. It'll be digitized, and then you can upload that into the local dispensary's website and pre-registration process. And they will round back to me and the doc to verify credentials to make sure everything's legitimate. And then you will be able to meet with or consult with the pharmacist at the dispensary, and then you should be good to go from there. So just a little bit more detailed, for the first step is the PTSD diagnosis. That happens after you have an assessment with an LCSW. LCSW is licensed clinical social worker. So I will send you a 37 question self-screen. You can take this on your own device. I will send you a link to your phone. And then if you rate moderate to high on any of the questions, it's pretty simple and it takes only a few minutes. Then you and I will have a face-to-face structured assessment, and we can do this on video or we can do this in person. That's about $150. It takes about 1 to 1.5 hours. And then from there, I will refer you to the QMP. You can always come back and join in on the medical cannabis groups or one-to-one sessions, me being your primary therapist. When it comes time to do your renewal every year for medical cannabis, the state may want to see that you've been involved in treatment or have a primary therapist that you're working on PTSD symptoms with. And so I can provide that for you. And then after you and I complete your assessment and you have a diagnosis of PTSD, I will refer you to my QMP, which is a quality medical provider. They are registered with the state medical cannabis department, and they can write you the affirmative defense or recommendation letter. They will also act as your primary care provider. So when it comes time to complete your renewal for your medical cannabis card next year, they can vouch for you. You can always return to both myself and your QMP or PCP to verify records and to make sure that you have all the sufficient documentation to continue with medical cannabis. The QMP will meet with you face-to-face for that initial visit, just to verify your diagnosis of PTSD and that you have had your assessment with me. And that's $100. And then for the next year, that'll be $50 a month for their services as a primary care provider. And that would include, going in for simple things, any testing, scrapes, cuts, antibiotics, stitches, anything like that. So pretty great deal for a primary care provider. Plus, the primary care provider that I work with and have a strong relationship with also does acupuncture and can help with other medications for anything else. And so it's a really great deal. They'll also digitize a letter, email that to you so that you can go on to the next step of the process. That takes about maybe 1 to 2 hours at the most. And then the last step is taking that digitized letter that's emailed to you from the primary care provider or the QMP, and uploading that into the pre-registration process on the website of the local dispensary. And they will take that letter and they'll get you all pre-registered. They'll come back to your QMP or primary care provider and me as your therapist that's diagnosed you with PTSD. They'll verify credentials and making sure that it's all legitimate. and that you've gone through a good quality process. And then they will invite you in to consult with their pharmacist, either in-house or you can go to their drive-up. The medicine that they have at the dispensary usually starts at about $50. And so from there, after you've consulted with the pharmacist, you're good to go. You can go into the dispensary and anytime and get your medicine, and you should be good to go from there. And so that's pretty much it. It's just, just a few steps, a process that you go through. It's real easy. It's not too expensive, pretty affordable. After about a year, next year, the state will be doing cards. Right now, that affirmative or a defense letter or the recommendation letter is sufficient. Once they start giving cards next year, you'll go to the state's website, their medical cannabis website, and you'll request a card with all of the documentation that you've retrieved or that your providers have on record after you've kind of gone through that process that I just discussed. With the renewal, there are some certain things that may come up, and so I want to give you just a list of questions that you ought to be asking yourself and the providers in this process early on, getting your letter and getting to the dispensary. And so I'm going to give you kind of just some examples of some questions that you ought to be thinking of now. And so some important questions to ask about medical cannabis for PTSD is the assessor a practicing mental health professional, an LCSW or higher? Does the assessor have an active Utah license in good standing? Does the assessor have a strong history and experience in assessing treating trauma? Does the practitioner use evidence-based screening, assessment, and treatment tools? Will the practitioner be able to treat my trauma, complementing my use of medical cannabis? Does the assessor have a strong professional relationship with their preferred or partner QMP, qualified medical provider? Can the qualified medical provider provide other primary medical services? Is the QMP registered with the state? Will my records be kept private and on file for at least 7 years? And can I access them if I have to, so that I don't have to go through the same process over again? And are these providers ones I can trust to return to for help with anything else related to medical or mental health in the future, and for my renewal, and maybe even for my family and our needs? These are really important questions to ask. I would like to say that myself and my QMP, if you ask these questions to us, we would have very positive responses, and the answers that we would have would make you feel like you're with the right team. And so if you are seeking medical cannabis for PTSD and you already have a diagnosis of PTSD, or you want to screen and assess for a diagnosis of PTSD, give me a text, 801-382-8259.